What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christoforou from the Duran, and I have with me Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. And today we're going to be talking about Turkey's exit from NATO and its entrance into the BRICS. So, Peter, we have some news about Turkey. And some news, what I would like to call a geopolitical earthquake, if it were to happen. And of course, what we're going to be talking about hasn't actually happened. Turkey has not realigned itself fully with the BRICS, with China, with Russia, with India. And it hasn't, as we all know, it hasn't left NATO either. But there are a lot of tensions, and there's a lot of speculation that Erdogan has started to think about realigning Turkey. Talk to our viewers about what this means in grander geopolitical terms.
Well, I think first of all, Erdogan is tired of being kicked around, particularly by the United States. And what he's saying, Erdogan is saying, loud and clear if you want to hear it, is that Turkey, his Turkey, because it really is his Turkey now, has options. And he's beginning to show those options. Wanting to become, or suggesting that Turkey can become a member of the BRICS is very significant, particularly for the geopolitical realities that surround Turkey and Washington's newest attempt to destabilize and eventually overthrow the government in Tehran. So let's go through a few of these things here. First, the United States has basically crashed the sovereign bond market for Turkey. Okay, so it has a serious debt crisis. The Lira is crashing. This is something that has to be alleviated, and that is done intentionally by the West. They don't buy their bonds. Okay, so there's essentially an unspoken boycott. Why the BRICS? Well, the Chinese got more money than God. Okay, they can finance this if they want. If the Chinese wants, it's like the gnat on the back of a fly. Okay, and Erdogan saying there's other places to go. The other issue, as the Iran deal was being negotiated, Turkey continued to be the banker for Iran to the rest of the world. The banks were used, and the Americans knew it, and they did not like it at all. Turkey is highly dependent on foreign energy exports. Iran again. Right. In November, the Trump administration is threatening sanctions on countries that import Iranian oil. The Turks are going to continue. Oh, that's right. Well, you don't want to buy our bonds, so what are you going to do to us now? All right. I mean, Washington, I don't care what administration is, they never think about the implications of their it's not even plans. It's their whims. Okay. All right. What else is going on here? Well, let's stay with energy. We have Turk Stream, where the Russians are going to be building a pipeline, a hub through Turkey that will go into the Balkans. Okay, the Turks will benefit immensely as being a transit country, and for being a transit country, you get lower prices. Well, that's a good deal, huh? The Germans know a lot about that with the North. Okay? Also, we have Turkey buying the S-400 missile system from Russia, which NATO is adamantly against. I'm not particularly sure the Russians should be doing it, but this is Erdogan saying, I have other options. You know, he should just telegraph this in every single language imaginable to the State Department, saying, we have options in Ankara. Right. The U.S. is not going to be selling its F-35s, which... okay, fine. Again, Russia makes very good jet planes as well. They could be in line for that. And last but not least, Turkey is a huge thorn in the side of American ability to project power in Syria. Two NATO allies going head to head. The Turks are not going to leave anytime soon. And the longer they stay there, there's no reason for Washington to be there because I hate to break it to our audience here. Nobody really wants them there, and you're there illegally, so go home.
Right.
So that's the checklist here. It's a pretty rich one, and Erdogan is showing ever so slowly and deftly his cards that he can play. So it's time for Brussels to start reimagining NATO, which they should have been doing since 1991 with the end of the Cold War and the end of the Warsaw Pact, okay? So this will kind of push it along. I think also as Erdogan starts playing these cards, showing these cards, he's going to get more comfortable with it as well. And Turkey, by the nature of its population, it's the second largest military in NATO. It is in reality, a major player in the region of the Middle East. By continuing to be in this very narrow defense alliance with NATO, they're denying themselves their geopolitical strengths. And this is what Erdogan, everyone, the new Sultan, the new Ottomanism and stuff like that. Erdogan thinks that Turkey has a major role to play in the region. It does, and it does not see, I want to stress, does not see Iran as an enemy. That makes Erdogan Washington's enemy.
Now, as someone from Cyprus and someone from Greece, we have a long history with Turkey. And if there's one thing that we know over the many decades and over the centuries, is that right when you think Turkey is going to, as a country that straddles between East and West, right when you think Turkey is about to make a shift, say away from the West and go East, it gets pulled back into the West. The West sweetens the deal. It makes some very good offers that Turkey can't refuse. NATO makes some offers that Turkey can't refuse. My question to you, Peter, is how much do you think Erdogan can be trusted? Or do you think he's just using all this rhetoric and all this hinting that he's going to move East or move with the BRICS to maybe extract something more from NATO, from Trump, from the U.S.?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, because of American exceptionalism and its effect on the global stage, Turkey's actually very rational in its behavior. It's good to say, I'm in the bazaar. What do you got to offer? Okay, hey! But this is how countries operate. That's how they operate. Turkey's not going to leave NATO immediately. It's not going to be brought into the BRICS immediately. But if the U.S. Starts going down the path of sanctioning its NATO ally, Turkey, then Turkey is being nudged. It's being nudged in a direction. Turkey, given its economic size, its population, and its military strength, it will play its cards carefully and with goals in mind. But Erdogan, for all you want to say about him, he's another one of these major personalities on the world stage. He's not going to give away things for nothing, and he's not going to burn bridges for nothing. He wants to see where things are going to go. I think, unfortunately, for everybody, it's depending on how the Americans, the Pompeos, the always confused Nikki Haley, how they approach Iran. The words that Trump was very erratic in a 2 or 3 day period about Iran. Basically the most threatening words you can imagine to meeting with no preconditions. Now, Erdogan in Ankara is looking like, what the heck's going on here? Okay, that's going to be, and the Turks are very, obviously everybody in the region wants to know what that means. Is it the art of the deal? Maybe we'll see. But Turkey, I can't stress enough that Turkey's coming into its own. It's been very dormant because of its wannabe member of the EU, which is a dead letter. We always knew that from the get-go. Okay, Turkey has become more Islamic. Okay, this is what keeps him in power. Right. You go to Ankara, go to Istanbul, and you see it's very westernized. You recognize a lot of things. Okay, but then you go 50 kilometers away from those cities, it's a very different country. It's very, very conservative, very, very traditional, and that's Erdogan's base. The people in Ankara hate him. The people in Istanbul, they hate him, but they're not the majority, and he knows that, and he could care less. Also, we have this American pastor that is being held by the Turks, and then we have the guy behind the coup. What's his name? The guy in Pennsylvania. Yeah. The Turks want him. Gulen. The Turks want him. I don't know what the State Department's position is there, but they're not going to do Erdogan any favors. If they're going to give that guy up, the U.S. is going to want a pound of flesh, and Erdogan doesn't. He's not in a cheerful mood. Okay, put it that way. He's not in a cheerful mood.
So going back to Gulen, I believe it was 2015 when the attempted coup happened in Turkey. Is that correct? Was it 2015? And a lot of the speculation is that the U.S. was either directly behind that coup or was nudging it along a little bit. And there's also speculation that Russia may have notified Erdogan as to what was going on. So there was a lot of behind the scenes taking place during that coup.
My sense is the U.S. knew it was about to happen, but they didn't do anything about it. It's one of the very rare coups in the world where I don't think the U.S. was overly involved. But that's a hot issue of contention. Okay,
yeah.
I don't see the evidence of that because Turkey has changed so very much that Erdogan is actually leading trends. And I'm not trying to give him compliments here. I'm being realistic here. I don't think just getting rid of Erdogan, you're going to change the nature of the body politic of Turkey. Erdogan let these Islamic forces loose and become very political. And at one point in time, and I have to admit that I was incorrect in my assessment that I thought he could actually manage both and be an example for the Middle East. I don't think that's the case anymore. Political Islam, I think the jury's still out on it. I mean, we have Iran, as fractured it can be. It still has regular political parties. It has a lot of political debate. So political Islam in the Middle East. I mean, I don't have a lot of good things to say about Hamas. I think Hezbollah has done a very good job in integrating itself into Lebanese politics. I think they play a positive role. But so, Erdogan, he's looking at a greater Turkey, and that's for his base. We always talk about Trump's base. Well, Erdogan has his base, and he speaks to it every single day. And so he knows Turkey is a very important country, and so does Russia. I mean, Russia, the Turks shot down a Russian plane. Okay,
explain that. Explain that to us for our viewers. How Russia moved from the SU getting shot down to now having, I would say, Putin speaking to Erdogan. They say weekly. How do you move from that incident that happened to where Turkey and Russia find themselves today as very close partners?
I don't think I'd say close partners, but the interesting for me is to see Erdogan and Putin standing next to each other at a press conference, and Putin will just come out and say, well, on Syria, we disagree.
Right.
And he just straight, okay? He's not lambasting it or convoluted language. He just says, we don't agree. We agree to disagree on this point here. How did we get to this point? I think that Erdogan overplayed his hand, making some kind of hostile gesture to Russia and trying to get some kind of concessions because Turkey hasn't come into being and all that. And the Russians are very sober about it. Okay, let's see what the next step is here. And then Erdogan realizes that the Russians is not his biggest problem. It's his allies in the West, particularly the Americans, because Erdogan truly believes the Americans wanted to overthrow him. Okay, that chapter of history needs to still be written, but Erdogan believes it, and he's the main guy, so that counts. All right, the Russians showed enormous maturity. Willing to, I remember it vividly. I was going to be doing a crosstalk on it, and my boss knew it, and he called me into his office, and he said, Peter, I know you're doing a program on Turkey. I'm going to ask you a favor, an exceptional favor. Can you kind of backpedal a little bit on Erdogan and Turkey? And I said, I can, but my guests will say whatever they want to say, but I can't tell them. And he said, because negotiations as we speak right now are going on in the background, and they're watching Russian television on all formats, and we need to show a message that, we're open to negotiation. I said, I can show I'm open for negotiation. But my other guests, well, that's up to them to say what they want to say. So it was very, very serious, and both sides have come out on top. And that's how diplomacy works, okay? And say, look, the Turks, they shoot down purposely a Russian jet. And then within a year and a half, they've been able to sit down with cooler heads. Remember, well, you're too young probably, but the Iran hostage crisis. Oh my God, we're never going to forget that. We're going to, that's so childish. It happened. It's over. Okay. And look at the information they found out. Well, how the U.S. worked with the Shah and the Savak and all of that. Okay. I mean, they've gotten over that. Okay. But the U.S. it's just in their DNA. It's just bizarre in my mind. But go ahead.
Yeah, take us, and I agree with you. I think the coup, whether the U.S., whatever role the U.S. had in it, whether it was minimal or a lot, I think it still stings Erdogan to this day. There's no doubt about it. But I want you to take us into a hypothetical scenario. Say Turkey does decide to break away from NATO, break away with the Western order, and go east and look towards the BRICS, look towards China, look towards Russia. How do you see the world should that happen? I mean, are you looking at a game-changing event? Are you looking at the collapse of NATO? Are you looking at more European nations thinking otherwise? Or would it be something that would just happen and the countries would get over it and things would just go back to the way they were?
Okay, number one, Turkey is going to set an example to other countries in the world that if the U.S. wants to crash your currency, crash your bond market, there are others that can help you out. That's number one. That's
huge.
Really, that's huge because the U.S. has weaponized the dollar. Okay, and they use and it's really interesting that we've had with George W. Bush, particularly under Obama, and now under Trump on steroids, is that they're willing to sanction their allies, not their opponents. And Turkey is going to be the poster child for that. Number two, if Erdogan sees no longer there's any utility whatsoever being in NATO, why do I have to buy your weapons at a premium? Okay, I can buy weapons from somewhere else. Okay. Meaning Russia, China, and other places. If one country leaves, no country's ever left NATO, and then that's it's kind of like a Brexit thing, where if one country leaves, then it's not a hypothetical anymore. It's a reality. You can actually jump ship.
And what a country! Turkey,
well, we're
not talking about once again Montenegro or anything.
Yeah. There you go. There's a great trade-off, right? No, I mean, but Turkey. I think the warped American media they don't give the sense of how important Turkey is to NATO. If Turkey leaves NATO is a different animal. It's a different animal, and being the second largest military. Plus, if you think about beyond this Russia hoax thing, Russia is a threat. The real security issues are in the Middle East, and that's Turkey's doorstep.
Right.
All right, and it'll also if Turkey shows itself being emboldened and not to have to stay in these military blocks and not ever going to be part of the European Union. In some ways, others will gravitate towards Turkey as a significant player. As it stays in NATO, it's kind of like there's a line drawn around it. But once it leaves NATO, then it's more of an independent wild card out there. What country in the Middle East would be very nice to Turkey? Iran. Yeah. You guys in Washington, Max Boot, wake up, okay? Wake up, you
I
idiot.
doubt that's going to happen.
Just wake up, you idiot. Okay? I mean, he's the only guy that can actually have an intellectual debate with Brian Stelter. I mean, look, two morons talking to each other.
Yeah, exactly. He hasn't been right about anything. That's for damn sure.
No, but see, this is what's really interesting. Turkey is going to be the poster child to break against dollar hegemony. Okay, it's convenient, but it doesn't have to do that. It will be painful. Yeah, it would be. Yeah. Look at the relationship that Turkey has with Germany. Forget the EU. Very, very strong there as well. Okay, and if it's not going to be Turkey can actually start mediating its relationship with Europe on bilaterals. Okay, it'll be Turkey and it will be Germany. Forget the EU. Okay, and then the Germans will do that. I mean, what percentage of the population of Germany is of Turkish descent? It's huge.
It's huge.
Huge.
It's like around 5 million plus. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
huge.
yeah. And
It's
so,
big.
this is kind of reimagining and redrawing of lines here. And the more you annoy Erdogan, and he's a Trump-like figure. I mean, he's in control, and he's going to be there for a while. And people just they know that, and they know that he has the resources. That if he wants to put something behind it, he's going to do it. Look. The Americans told him repeatedly, stay out of North Syria. And you know what? He completely ignored him. And as a matter of fact, said, if you get in our way, you're going to see something that has never happened before because we're moving in. Not that I'm happy about it. It's illegal against international law. But the U.S. is blinking. It's blinking because it doesn't have a reason to be there. The Turks, with the Kurds and all that, I mean, could make separate. We can talk about this on a separate video because it's very complicated.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's the U.S. and the rest of NATO that is blinking when Erdogan moves.
Yeah. Well, one final question then on this. Trump has been able to engage with Kim. He's been able to engage with Putin. He's even hinted at engaging, like you said earlier, with Iran and Rouhani. Why do you think Trump has not began dialogue or started to engage with Erdogan yet? Why haven't we seen any tweets, saying, Erdogan, I'm ready to sit down with you, or let's, talk this over. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a summit.
I think it has. First of all, Erdogan knows that if he meets Trump, he's going to be a lesser figure, and that's not how Erdogan thinks. Okay. Kim and Putin are in their own separate category. I mean, Russia is a nuclear state. I mean, there's nothing, you can't deny that, all right? And Trump has a sympathy towards having better relations with Russia for a variety of reasons. Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize. But with Erdogan, it's all this, it's a web that's all mixed up with the European Union, with NATO and all that. And Erdogan, he's gonna want a pound of flesh, even to get that kind of one-to-one. He's not going to show up for a photo op. Last 2 times he's been in Washington, he's been treated really in a very terrible way, in a very shabby way. Now, again, I don't get into the realm of he's a good guy, a bad guy. He's a meaningful guy. He's a meaningful world figure, and you got to deal with him. The U.S. shunned him. I think last time, Barack Obama was still in power, he gave him like a 5-minute one-on-one. It was just a photo op. Erdogan was insulted by it. He thought that was not fair. Why did he go all the way there to meet someone just for a photo op? It didn't cut the mustard for him. Right. So I think that, Trump, he's, and I think, I've noticed this. I mean, Trump kind of dances around the stage and, moved the embassy to Jerusalem and decided to bomb Syria without any evidence. That's kind of a trend with Americans. But Iran is this red line. That is Trump's red line. And it's because of the Israelis, because of the Saudis and the other Gulf countries. And I think he's going to be, as one of his big supporters told me on CrossTalk, he said, I think it was James Jatras, he said that, basically, Trump's got his plate full right now. He doesn't need to irritate the Israelis and the Saudis, okay? He's got other things to do. That may be an explanation. But Turkey is just very different because it has real power, real resources, and real will, okay? And that's why I don't think it's going to necessarily happen. And for Erdogan, he's not going to make any big decision one way or another. He's going to go down as many paths as possible until he realizes that the accumulation of interest moves him in one direction. And that's perfectly rational to do that. But, the way the European Union treats Turkey and Erdogan, he just had enough. And he sees the hypocrisy all of the time when it comes to, your elections are rigged and stifling the media. Well, Facebook and Twitter stifle conservatives, okay? And look what they're doing to Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, this ridiculous it's like their Russia thing, calling a labor leader an anti-Semite. He sees how the media manipulates everything. Oh, and what about the Skripals? Where are they? I mean, you trying to lecture Turkey on these things. It's just hypocrisy to high heaven.
Yeah, and one thing about Erdogan is he is not a dumb guy. He understands exactly what's going on, and he's a very powerful figure and a very rational figure on the world stage. And I say that as someone who is not supportive of Erdogan or Turkey for various reasons. But
yeah, but you see it objectively.
Yeah.
Objectively, this guy is a political survivor.
He's
I mean,
a political
to get to the top, and you got to remember, a lot of our viewers probably don't remember, but for most of the post-war period, it was the Turkish army that was the anchor of political power. And what Erdogan has done, he's actually changed that. He's moved the military out. And it's a lot of military analysts have told me that his attack on the military has made the military weaker and they're less effective because of his determination to get the Turkish army out of Turkish politics. No, that takes a unique individual to be able to pull something like that off. Ask our good friend Alexander Makiris. He'll tell you what the juntas were like in the 70s.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think you said it perfectly, that Erdogan, for all his pluses and minuses, he is a survivor. I mean, he survived the coup, for God's sakes. And I mean, from what I understand, they had him in the crosshairs. They were ready to assassinate him, to shoot him down. And before you knew it, he was on FaceTime broadcasting to all the citizens to get out in the streets. He survived.
And I do believe that there was a third party, that Russia used a third party to tell him, heads up, it's tonight.
Yeah. And just like we said, he probably felt stung by the U.S.'s role in that coup. I would imagine that he feels a different way about Russia's warning during that coup.
Well, but this is it. This is it, and I really wish other countries of the European Union would realize, and I guess they saw it with Trump's trip. I mean, the U.S. just doesn't have a lot of respect for these countries. They're part of the imperium, and you're supposed to do what you're told. Don't trade with these people. We'll crash your bond market. We'll sanction you. And believe it or not, Turkey's like saying, we're not going to be treated that way. The rest of you want to be treated that way? Okay, fine. But we don't have to. We have options. And that's what Erdogan is telling the entire world. Those pictures from the BRICS Summit, oh, man. Yeah, you'd think he was already a member.
Yeah, absolutely. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And those pictures probably have NATO and the U.S. just shaking their heads, scratching their heads. What the hell are we going to do?
And that just, again, shows Putin, step-by-step, consistency, Russia's national interest, never goes off the handle, always thinking the pros and cons, and moving slowly. It's perfect statecraft. Henry Kissinger doesn't have very many years left in him, but he wrote a book. I think it came out in the 80s. It was called Diplomacy. It's a brilliant book. Brilliant. I'm not a big fan of Henry, but I'm a fan of this book. And it would be really great if someone like Henry Kissinger could write a chapter of Putin's diplomacy, because it is a textbook case of success.
Right. That it is. Peter Lavelle, and on that note, we will leave it. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Thank you very much for discussing Turkey. Guys, if you like this video, please subscribe by clicking that subscribe button down below. Also, click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop. Help support the Duran. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Thank you very much. Until next time, guys, take care.